ever taken a look at Africa on the world map and noticed that the continent seems to be splitting in two? One of the most complex geographical wonders of the world, the East African Rift, is an area rich with natural wonders. Not only is there a deep physical rift caused by shifting tectonic plates, there is a social and political rift that runs just as deep. From Ethiopia to Kenya, from the Red Sea to the Arabian Sea, RVTV covers it all. Hello, welcome to Rift Valley Tube, your source for the histories, news and narratives of the phenomena that is East Africa and its shifting lands.
Hello and welcome to our channel, RVTV. Rift Valley Tube is your YouTube source for all the history and happenings of East Africa. If you like our content and are interested in learning more about the wonders of East Africa, hit the subscribe button. Today, we will take a look at an article, CNN's biased reporting on Ethiopia's conflict screams for an independent investigation, written by Dr. Yonas Biru. In April 2021, the former U.S. Assistant Secretary of State for African Affairs confided to me in an email message that he has been warned that the Tigrayan People's Liberation Front, the TPLF, is financing some journalists who are making the Tigray situation look much worse than it is. Whether TPLF is financing international journalists to systematically vilify the Ethiopian government is difficult to verify. One thing is for sure, CNN persistently peddles false narratives about genocidal crimes and the use of rape and starvation as weapons of war, knowing full well they are unsubstantiated. Evidently, CNN also has a hear no evil, see no evil, speak no evil policy when it comes to atrocities committed by the TPLF. This is not to say Ethiopian forces have not been accused of atrocities. A joint UN and Ethiopian Human Rights Commission EHRC report has documented both Ethiopian and TPLF forces have committed serious abuses and violations of human rights. The laxity of CNN's adherence to strict code of journalistic conduct and lack of impartiality in its coverage of Ethiopia's war cannot be reviewed in isolation. To have a grasp of the full picture, one needs to pay close attention to TPLF's sophisticated misinformation campaign that is aided by international media consultants and lobbying powerhouses. How TPLF deceived Amnesty International serves as a classic case of the power of misinformation. On the 26th of February, 2021, Amnesty International issued a report on atrocities committed in Axum, a historic city in the Tigray tribal land, based on 41 survivors and 20 witnesses with knowledge of the events. The report stated, Eritrean troops fighting in Ethiopia's Tigray state systematically killed hundreds of unarmed civilians in the northern city of Axum on the 28th and 29th of November 2020, opening fire in the streets and conducting house-to-house raids in a massacre that may amount to a crime against humanity. Mr. Diprose Wachena, Amnesty International's Director for East and Southern Africa, characterized the evidence as compelling and points to a chilling conclusion. Not long after, on March 17th, Joan Mariner, the Director of Crisis Response for Amnesty International, investigating war crimes, repudiated the compelling evidence as incorrect as to the date and as to the circumstances. When 41 survivors and 20 witnesses narrate the same story to the minute details that prove to be false, it is hard to avoid the conclusion that the story was scripted and rehearsed for international organizations' consumption. One would think CNN could learn from Amnesty International's humiliating lesson. Sadly, watching CNN's reports on the current conflict in Ethiopia is witnessing a gross violation of basic journalistic code of conduct. TPLF exaggerated, if not fabricated, claims are taken on face value and peddled to the international public without verification, triangulation, or circumscription of the report as unverified by independent parties. Far from verification and circumscription of unsubstantiated claims, CNN eagerly takes every accusation against the Ethiopian government to build a narrative of evidence of a methodical campaign, one which bears all the hallmarks of genocide as defined by international law. In some cases, CNN resorts to shenanigan fraud, elevating unsubstantiated claims as an additional piece of evidence to complete its genocidal claim jigsaw puzzle. In one case, CNN used bullet casings that family members of Tigrayan victims sent to it as material evidence of genocide. To give credence to the story, CNN sent the alleged evidence to forensic experts for analysis and got confirmation that the bullet casings were from weapons that the Ethiopian government would use. The fact that Ethiopian and TPLF forces use the same weapons and the bullet castings could be from TPLF was of no concern to CNN. There was no confirmation that the castings shelled the bullets that killed the alleged victims. This, too, was of no concern to CNN. To thicken the plot, the use of rape as a weapon of war was alleged based on one interview a CNN reporter had with a Tigrayan doctor. The doctor alleged Tigrayan women were being raped to force them to change their ethnic identity as part of the Ethiopian government's campaign of ethnic cleansing. According to the CNN reporter, the doctor believed that the reported rapes were not a result of ill-disciplined soldiers, but rather a systemic use of rape as a weapon of cleansing the bloodline of Tigrayans. According to CNN's report, every woman and girl who was being raped was told the act was to humiliate her and make her change her identity. The CNN reporter went on to say, "This is what gives this a hallmark of genocide. That is what gives this a hallmark of ethnic cleansing, rather than just an unfortunate consequence of war." Once the story of cleansing of the bloodline of Tigrayans was framed, the next step was inflating the number of rape victims. The doctor told CNN that the total number of rapes that were reported to him were less than 10. However, he suspects the number is potentially in the thousands in the area where he was operating. His suspicion is based on the injury he was presented with. It defies logic how the doctor extrapolated the number of rape victims to thousands based on the severity or the nature of the wounds of less than 10 rape victims he examined. What makes the whole thing ludicrous is the assertion that CNN's report is substantiated by its extraordinary team working inside Tigray. CNN does not have an office in Tigray. It is well known that TPLF was established by the Marxist-Leninist League of Tigray, the MLLT. Leaders of MLLT fancy themselves as followers and later heirs of Enver Hoxha, the supreme leader of Albanian communism. Their manifesto makes it clear that they choose Enver Hoxha's genre of communism because of its strict control of not only over party members, but also over the general populace. Given TPLF's total control of every aspect of life in Tigray, CNN's extraordinary team can only come from TPLF-recruited or controlled locals. We have a case of the accuser investigating the accused on behalf of CNN. In a total rebuke of CNN's unprofessional, if not commissioned report, Foreign Policy brought to light a leaked telephone conversation transcript in which several UN officials who are stationed in Ethiopia agreed there was no evidence to substantiate rape being perpetrated as a weapon of war. The UN representative for African Union and UN Economic Commission for Africa, the ECA, characterized such allegations as media hype. Similarly, the UN Population Fund, the UNPF, representative found it very sensationalist. She added, "I have woken up to messages from journalists that they are going out with a report on how safe houses that are supported by the UNFPA, where we protect women and girls that have been victims of sexual violence, have been raided by armed forces in Ethiopia. I do not know any safe houses that have been raided by anyone." Another systemic accusation that CNN repeated many times is the deliberate blockade of food, putting the people of Tigray at risk of mass starvation. To the contrary, a joint UN and Ethiopian Human Rights Commission report could not confirm deliberate or willful denial of humanitarian assistance to the civilian population in Tigray or the use of starvation as a weapon of war. Furthermore, CNN took proactive steps using unnamed experts to criminalize a perfectly legal action by the Ethiopian government. In one case, it accused the Ethiopian government of violating international aviation law for allegedly using Ethiopian airplanes to transport military personnel and armaments. CNN's own aviation experts unequivocally rejected CNN's assertion. They emphasized the Ethiopian government owns the Ethiopian Airlines and can decide whether to use it for civilian or military purpose. They went further to note countries around the world routinely use their airlines for military purposes in time of emergency or war. CNN did not have to consult experts on this. They could have Googled it. According to the Smithsonian Magazine, during World War II, American airlines, aircraft, cargo, and personnel not only worked closely with the military to further the war effort, they were also placed under the control of the Air Transport Command. Unlike the Ethiopian Airlines, that is owned by the government, American airlines were privately owned. World War II was not an exception. During the Iraq War, 10 private airlines and 14 cargo carriers were contracted to fly troops and equipment to Iraq and neighboring countries. This, CNN does not even need Google. CNN itself was touting the militarization of the airlines as patriotic duty. In one report, the headline read, "Military and Civilian Worlds Meet at Airport." The message was, you may not like the war, but do like the warrior. There is no plausible explanation for CNN's zeal to damage the Ethiopian Airlines other than TPLF official advocates' publicly expressed desire to destroy the airlines and have its membership with Star Alliance revoked. CNN's transgressions did not stop with peddling false and fabricated claims against the Ethiopian government and its business interests, as shown with the Ethiopian Airlines. Its deafening silence about atrocities committed by the TPLF is far worse in terms of ignoring potential crimes against humanity. When the war was fought in Tigray proper, CNN gave a blanket coverage to the atrocities committed by Ethiopian forces, often sensationalizing and exaggerating it. After TPLF became the aggressor in June 2021, and the war moved from Tigray to Amhara and Afar regions, CNN adopted a hear no evil, see no evil, speak no evil policy. Simply put, CNN's zeal to accuse the Ethiopian government of genocide is matched by its devotion to turn a blind eye to TPLF's gross atrocities. TPLF's crime against humanity in the Amhara and Afar region is documented by the Amnesty International as despicable acts that amount to war crimes and defy any iota of humanity. The Organization for World Peace reported TPLF's crimes against humanity includes using child soldiers for the purpose of human shields against attacks. Article 36, Section 1D of Ethiopia's Constitution promulgates that children shall be protected against exploitative practices and not to be permitted to engage in any employment which would prejudice their health, education, or well-being. The minimum age for voluntary or compulsory recruitment to join the military cohort in Ethiopia is 18. The president of Tigray and chairman of the TPLF, Debretsion Gebremichael, is on the record announcing every Tigrayan, starting from children, will fight in the war. TPLF spokesperson Getachew Reda justified recruiting 17-year-old children, stating, "These are children whose parents have been subjected to untold suffering in the hands of Eritrean, Ethiopian, and Amharan forces." A captured TPLF military leader put the age range of TPLF fighters between 14 and 15 to 64 to 65. Even worse, he acknowledged of the 1,400 forces he was leading, 800 were armed and 600 were unarmed. These are children used as human shields. Between 1988 and 2004, when Joseph Kony of the Ugandan Lord's Resistance Army used 30,000 Ugandan child soldiers, CNN was at the forefront of the media, condemning Kony as a brutal warlord. In 1995, CNN characterized ISIS's use of child soldiers in Iraq and Syria as stomach-churning. CNN's lack of reaction to TPLF's use of child soldiers, who are dying in tens of thousands, can only be characterized as deafening criminal silence. TPLF's crime is not limited to using child soldiers and raping women in Amhara and Afar regions. Destruction of properties and looting of any movable object from hospitals, schools, businesses, and small shops is part of its war strategy. According to Euro-Asia Review, the USAID is on the record acknowledging Tigrayan forces looted USAID warehouses in Ethiopia's Amhara region. USAID Mission Director Sean Jones stated, "We do have proof that several of our warehouses have been looted and completely emptied in the areas, particularly in Amhara, where TPLF soldiers have gone into." Furthermore, recently, joint UN and Ethiopian Human Rights Commission report revealed Tigray forces set up road blockades to delay the delivery of humanitarian relief to their own people. According to the UN, TPLF confiscated 428 UN aid trucks to use them for transporting TPLF militia and weapons to the war fronts. Sadly, CNN has done the international community a gross disservice by christening TPLF as a victim and demonizing the Prime Minister Abiy's administration with fabricated genocidal crime, including using rape and starvation as weapons of war. The misinformation has reached the highest level of the U.S. government hierarchy, as evidenced in Senator Patrick Leahy's recent claim of genocide occurring in Tigray. The senator's claim stands in line with CNN's reporting, but contradicts UN's report that stressed there is no evidence to support a genocidal crime.